Alrighty, hello everybody. Hope you're having a good day. This is another episode of Ask Azren, which has been on a hiatus for a long time. I don't even know how long it's been on a hiatus for. It's probably one of the most inconsistent pieces of content that I make on YouTube. But here we are, Ask Azren episode something. We'll see. I'll have to see what episode it is once I upload it. If you haven't seen these before, it's pretty straightforward. I take different language learning questions and I answer them for you. Now, today we actually have someone asking me some questions, who is Jared. Want to say
Hey,
hello, Jared?
how's it going?
Good, doing well. So Jared does some part-time work for me. He helps run the Language Learning Nerds Facebook group. Do you still make content? Not really. A little bit. You do still make some content.
A little bit here and there, yep.
Make some content. Used to make more. Used to make more before. And then what else do you do? You're now helping with these, so I guess you are back to making some more content and helping out.
Yeah, a little bit of social media stuff, a little bit of content here and there.
Give us a fun fact about you, Jared. Let's add some color.
Oh, a fun fact about me. I was, I can solve a Rubik's Cube.
You can what?
I can solve a Rubik's Cube.
Lovely. You can
I
solve
learned how to do that when I
Rubik's
was younger. I used to practice a lot and I got pretty quick with it.
Cube. Nice. Good stuff. All right, Jared. Well, the floor is yours. I know you've got some questions, so you can
Yes,
ask
let
whatever
me
you'd like.
start with the first question here, Azren. What is one piece of advice that you'd give to every language learner?
One piece of advice to every language learner. The first thing that comes to mind, it's something I default to quite often, is that it typically takes longer than you initially thought it would take you to learn a language. So whatever time frame you had in your mind that, oh, this is how long it'll probably take, it's most likely going to take longer. So be ready, just be patient, and be patient with it. And I think that would be the one big thing that comes to mind to me.
Okay, the next question. What is the first country you'd like to visit after COVID-19 and why?
The first place I'd like to visit after COVID-19, I want to go to Singapore. Singapore would be really cool to visit. I would also like to go so Taiwan is a very small island, but around Taiwan there's even smaller islands. There's some very, very, very small islands. I would like to visit some of those islands. It'd be cool.
And why would you like to go there?
It just seems so different. It seems, from compared to anywhere I've been before, I don't think I've ever been to a place where it's just a very small island where there's not that many international tourists. I think they get tourists from Taiwan, like a lot of Taiwanese people might go for a getaway or things like that. From what I've heard anyway. But I don't think they get many international tourists, and it'd be nice to go visit, see what it's like. And it sounds just like a new experience in comparison to other places that I've been to.
And do they speak Taiwanese in those islands, or do they have a different
They
language?
speak Mandarin. They speak Mandarin.
Okay.
Yeah, they speak Mandarin. I think that I actually don't even know very much about them, to be honest. I think that people speak like Thai. What do you call it in English? I don't know how to say that in English. I think it's called Taiwanese in English. I don't know the language in English actually, but they say Thai in Mandarin, which would be like Taiwan language. So Taiwanese seems logical. I think people would, but I don't know if it's like predominantly Taiwanese speaking or Mandarin. I actually don't even know. I know very, very little about them, but there's some kind of appeal to go.
Yeah. Go to places that other people don't normally go. I think that's interesting.
Well, me, I just don't. I've never been to places like that.
Tourists in general, right?
Yeah, tourists in general too. So yeah.
How many languages do you speak on a daily basis?
5. I speak English every day. I speak French basically every day. I speak Spanish basically every day. I speak Mandarin. I don't speak Mandarin every day, but I do speak Mandarin regularly. I would say I do on Fridays. I do on Saturdays. I do on Tuesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Tuesdays. I have a Chinese literature class Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but it's not in Mandarin, so I don't know if that counts. I sometimes do an extra Mandarin tutoring session on Thursdays. Oh, I do have someone I talk to Mandarin every Thursday. I do actually. So Thursdays I do. Basically every day of the week I speak Mandarin. And then Gujarati is every day. So English, French, Spanish, Mandarin, Gujarati. Yeah, those are the 5.
So when you speak these languages, is it mostly in the context of teaching and tutoring, or also in your own friend groups?
Mostly teaching and tutoring. Mostly teaching and tutoring. Some of them are casual, so like the Fridays I speak Mandarin, and it's a pretty casual like practice group that we all get together, and there's like a lot of native speakers as well as learners, and we kind of hang out. It's pretty casual. But mostly teaching and tutoring with some exceptions.
Cool. So those are all the languages that you speak, you use almost on a daily basis?
Yep, every language I speak I use basically on a daily basis.
In your experience, which language has the most difficult pronunciation?
When you look at the polyglot community, you have, I find, two different types of polyglots. You have some that are like, what's that guy's name? The guy, his username is like LAO something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Lao Shu?
Yeah, Lao Shu, yeah.
Yeah.
So he, to my knowledge anyway, speaks more languages to a shallow level than almost anyone else I've come across.
Yeah.
I think. He speaks a lot of languages.
Close to 50, I think.
Something like that. It's a huge number. And some of them he speaks better than others, obviously. When you got 50 languages under your belt, I mean, you know, it's very understandable that some of those have a more shallow level of knowledge, right? Which is very, very understandable. So there's that type of polyglot where they speak a lot of different languages. Some are pretty fluent, some are maybe less fluent, but they speak quite a few. And then there's people that are more like me, who speak the languages that I speak them all quite well. I'm still learning Mandarin, I'm still getting better at Gujarati, but like the goal for me is to have like a near native level of fluency. So when you ask me that question, you'll get a very different answer than if you asked Lao Shu, for example, because he's had experience with so many different languages, and versus me, I've had experience with, you know, I speak 5, I probably had experience with, I would say 10, maybe at the most, if I had to just think about it very quickly off the top of my head. In my experience though, I would say Korean for me. When I was learning some Korean, I was learning a little bit back in December. I really had a difficult time with some of the letters. I had a very difficult time. Very challenging for me.
In pronouncing the letters or differentiating?
Yeah, pronouncing them. I could hear them. It took a while to hear them too, actually, initially. Then even after I could hear them, I had a very difficult time saying them properly. So that was difficult. I would say for many, probably like Hindi, Gujarati, like a lot of the northern Indian languages probably have some challenge there, because there's a wide variety of different sounds. So like, to put it in very simple terms, Spanish, if you take the Spanish alphabet, Gujarati has the entire Spanish alphabet within the language. And then probably about, if I had to ballpark it, probably about 30% more sounds.
Wow.
So like Spanish has B, like la B. We have B as well, but then we have B. Spanish has K, like la C or la K. We also have K, but then we have K. So
is that like an aspirated sound?
You got it. We have an aspirated variant of every sound. And then we even have others, like Spanish has te and de. We have the and the. We could all say te and de. But then we also have ta and the. And then we have ta and da. And then we have ta and da. So we have 4 different T's and 4 different D's. So I could imagine that being difficult for a learner. It's not hard for me because I grew up with it, but I can imagine it being difficult for a learner.
When it comes to the pronunciation and how that corresponds with being able to understand the language as well, understanding someone's pronunciation, do you think that it's more difficult for speakers of, say, Indian languages, where there's very few foreigners that learn them? Do you think it's harder for these groups of people to understand learners of those languages?
As in, like, you take a random Indian person who's trying to understand a Canadian trying to speak Hindi, Like it's
Correct,
difficult, it's harder.
Yeah. Whereas an English
Um,
speaker, we hear accents from all over the world, right? A lot of people learn English. It's a very popular language to learn, obviously, but Hindi is less popular for, let's say, Westerners to learn. So if I was to learn Hindi and speak to an Indian person, would it be harder for them to understand me if I didn't say those aspirated sounds correctly?
well, I don't know. Let's start there. I'm not 100% sure. But what my gut says as of right now is that for any, just like any language, it depends on how good your pronunciation is. Like if you're reasonably close to pronouncing things well, they'll understand you. They might just be really surprised that Jared from Canada is speaking Hindi, right? But they should, I would think, I could be wrong, but I would think that they'd understand, but I could be wrong. For example, there's a good example I thought of. I remember talking to, I think it was, Lindy?
Yeah.
Lindy, what's your last name?
Boats, is it? Boats?
Oh, Boatis or Boat, I don't know how to say it. Yeah. I did an interview with her a long time ago, like maybe 2 years ago. And we were talking, because she speaks Korean. And we had a conversation. I remember her telling me that a lot of Koreans she would speak to them in Korean, Lindy. And the Koreans would reply back in English that was more broken, that was like in broken English, because they couldn't compute that someone that looks like her, that does not look Korean, is speaking in Korean.
Right.
So she was, I think it was her that was telling me that. I'm pretty sure that it was her that was saying that when I interviewed her.
Because she doesn't look like she should speak the language, they automatically switch to English.
Exactly.
I have that experience a lot in Tagalog and Filipino. I have that.
Really? You had that experience?
Yeah. Yeah, quite frequently actually. There are groups of people where if I engage them in Filipino, they'll respond. And there are people that will not, no matter what I say, no matter what level I speak at, they will only respond to me in English.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So then we have a really backwards conversation where the Canadian guy is speaking Tagalog and the Filipino person is speaking English, and we have that kind of exchange.
I get that nowadays, not because of what I look like. I just think it's a cultural thing actually. So in Gujarati, a lot of Gujaratis, maybe even all, or let's say most Gujaratis, they don't only speak in Gujarati, they mix a lot of English into their Gujarati. They mix a fair amount of English, and that's compounded even more. It's compounded even more if they don't live in India anymore.
Right.
So I remember I was in a Gujarati practice group, a whole bunch of us, and one of the ladies was married to a Gujarati man. So she's not Gujarati, but she's married to someone who is, and he came, and Gujarati is his first language. He's born and raised in India, grew up in India, but in our context, he would barely speak in Gujarati. He'd speak to us in English. Not because he's incapable, not because we're not Gujarati, I don't think, but mostly because he's, if I had to guess, based on my experience with my own family, they're in such a habit of speaking English on a day-to-day basis. It's just not natural anymore to just speak in Gujarati. My family's like that too. It's very even when they talk to each other, the elders, like my grandparents' generation, when they talk to each other, Gujarati, they grew up speaking Gujarati. That's like what they did for 20, 30 years of their lives, 20 years of their lives, more accurate. They still speak it just fine, and yet they will engage each other in English because of just force of habit of being in Canada for 50 years.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they've maintained the comprehension of the language, but the actual
and speaking. Oh, they can speak very well. They have they can read. They absolutely can. And if you stick someone from India in front of them that doesn't really speak English, they speak in perfect Gujarati. No problems. They don't fumble over the words. They know all the words. They like when my grandma talks to her sister, like just goes directly into full Gujarati, like no English coming in, like full. But then when it's like a Canadian, like a family member in Canada who's been in Canada for the same amount of time, they switch. They use a lot of English.
I think you see that in a lot of countries too, even outside of immigrating to another country, but just colonial roots in certain regions where English became a predominant language, even though there was another language already there, or is another language already there. And then you have a population that is more or less completely bilingual. and it's interesting to see what context they use each language. For example, in East Africa and a lot of places, a lot of countries there, Kenya, Uganda, all education is in English in school,
Mm-hmm.
but they wouldn't necessarily speak English with each other in the street. So it's interesting that dynamic of code switching that you're talking about. Of okay,
Right.
we can speak this language, but we're actually going to speak this language because we're in school or we're in, this environment.
Well, everyone, thank you for watching, and I guess you'll see us soon. Bye-bye, everyone.